manure run into a stream. And because we don't have enough money to offer them cost share, doesn't mean that we condoning that to exist. So there's some blatant things that we need to obviously address where cost share might not be available, but they do need to address it. So that's kind of maybe the main reason we exist, or I shouldn't say the main reason, but some of our major workload is looking at the implementation of NR 151. This next slide, you should see a whole list of programs, and this is not all inclusive, but this is areas that we have our hands in or our heads in. So I mentioned the Land and Water Plan, NR 151. We have Farmland Preservation Program in the county. That Farmland Preservation Program has been looked at by many counties for many years as a very big carrot and tool for soil and water conservation practice implementation. So Farmland Preservation Program is you enroll in that program to, in just what it says, preserve farmland. But as a result, you'll need to comply with a soil and water best management practices, so meeting NR 151 requirements. And in return, you'll receive tax credits based on your location on the landscape, your governmental jurisdiction, and a number of other things. But it's been a good tool in the past. In recent years, it's kind of dwindled because the tax credits haven't been able to compete with commodity prices in some cases. So sometimes it's not as lucrative or of interest of people to participate. The Soil and Water Resource Management Program, that SWRM, that is where I talked about our staffing grant and cost share funds. Ag Performance Standards and Manure Storage and Management Ordinance. So this is an update it's been going on for many years, but I have the privilege of tying the bow on it here, hopefully at the July County Board meeting, but that is an update to the county's manure management ordinance. So in the past, we basically any manure storage facility that was going to be new or altered required a permit, and then it required certain standards that it be followed to be in compliance with the intent of meeting water quality standards. That ordinance was adopted in the year 2000 and has not been updated since. So coming up here in July, we'll have hopefully that ordinance adopted, and we can move forward. The changes on that ordinance incorporate NR 151. So all those other conservation practices that we talked about before, meeting T, having a nutrient management plan, those are incorporated into our county ordinance now. And with that also comes a bit more enforcement teeth or backbone, if you will, such as citation authority to make sure that we are meeting those requirements. And citation authority is a strong word for some people. Some people don't like the fact that maybe we can go issue citations to people. And I would say to them that is not our intent to go out and issue citations. Our intent is to work with landowners to get into compliance with the rules. But there are going to be times where having citation authority and having a bit more enforcement is going to be necessary to get the needs that we get the outcomes we need on the landscape. I guess I don't want to talk through each individual one of these, but if there's certain ones that come up that you see on here and have questions on, I certainly could answer them. Non-metallic mine reclamation being probably one of them, and some of our other programs. I'm going to just jump out of this quick, and I just want to let me know how things look on your end. I want to just give you a little different perspective on what we what screen do you all see now? Do you still see my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
with the individual slides on the left.
Okay. I am going to try this again and share something else with you. All right, now do you see kind of a generic bunch of words and blocks on the screen.
Yes.
With your programs.
Yep.
Yep.
Should say Dunn County LWC programs with a date in the upper left.
Mhm.
Yes.
So hopefully this works. But when I started here, admittedly, even though I had been in conservation for a dozen years and knew a lot of these programs, it's a different ball game here in Dunn County compared to Pepin. Larger facility, more staff, more involvement by the public. So I just started using this program to start collecting my thoughts and trying to organize it. And, I just went down the list of everything that started getting thrown at me or things that I knew I needed to read. And, I started creating these blocks of all these different things that seem to be coming through our division across my desk. And, it doesn't really never end, it seems like, but as new ones come up, I try to stick them in, and they're in no particular priority order, but there's still plenty of things out there that I have yet to discover. But in general, if you zoom in on some of this stuff, trying to look at what role we play here in the county with our division, and you can start connecting a lot of different dots. I can expand all these, and this just goes into more and more different things from our land and water plan. Now, how does that connect with the livestock operations and study group? And where are we at on implementation of those recommendations? I've started to color some things or provide color to some of these for my own understanding of where we're at. And then eventually, how does that relate to the groundwater ad hoc group recommendations, and where are we at on progress made there? And just trying to connect all these different relationships to all these different programs. And I guess that's can be viewed as part of one of the fun parts of our job, is we're diverse. Every day is something different. We have a lot of different things that come across our desks with all of our staff, but it can get quite challenging to manage all of these things. And I've always struggled with the idea of, do you do a couple things really well, or do you do a lot of things half-hearted or not as well? And in reality, it's hard to say no to certain things when you know that there's an issue there, there's a resource concern, that there's a citizen that has a need, and you want to be respectful and responsive to them. But it's, at the same time, we need to make sure that there's only so much time in a day. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's my way of trying to organize this as I've onboarded here with Dunn County. And I only expect it to get more complicated in the near future. With that, I'm just going to jump back to my slides quick and finish this up, and then we can jump into questions. Okay, let's see here. All right, you should be able to see my presentation again.
Yes.
Yes. Full
Okay.
screen.
All right, good. So I just, it wouldn't be a decent presentation or slideshow if you didn't throw pictures in there. Many of you probably are familiar with a number of these activities, but I just want to throw a couple in. The upper left here is a picture of an abandoned manure storage facility. I can't tell you, I bet you we have at least 2 days a week. I have staff coming back and say, hey, we come across another manure storage structure that's not being used. Many of these were predated ordinance. Many of them predated any even design. As scary as it is, they were just holes dug in the ground. And now we've had manure in them for a generation, and here they sit. And we try to utilize those cost share funds when we can to get those closed. Try to work with those landowners to close them on their own if they're willing to do that, but obviously there's an expense there. So the upper left is an existing structure on this farm. We came in and did a design and properly abandoned it by removing the contamination as best as we could, and then made sure that we're not going to have further contamination of the site in the future. And the bottom picture is looking at it from a different way, but that structure is no longer there and it's vegetated. Another example for a grassed waterway, maybe not the most ideal situation. We probably have worse ones out there, but you can see gully erosion in along the field edge, and being able to go out there and fix that waterway to make sure that it's functioning and not depositing sediment further downstream. Just a little bit of context. This is conservation practices are engineering only, so just the hard practices, so the dams, waterways, other critical area or infrastructure type engineering activities that we utilize cost share funds for. The black stars on the map are all the practices we've implemented since 2017. So basically, for the last 4 years, we'll have another dozen or so practices to add to this for 2021. But I guess that when I looked at this map, I thought, a couple things. I thought, well, we should have more stars on that map, or knowing that we're in the Red Cedar TMDL, the water quality management area, that we should have more stars in that Red Cedar watershed. And the reality is that there are tons of practices that we've implemented over the years in much of Dunn County. They're just not represented from these last 4 years. And the other thing that I recognize is that the amount of grant dollars and cost share funds available tend to always be a limiting factor. And we're exploring different things that we may not have always done in the past for other sources of funding. So I look forward to that in the future, but those are going to come with tremendous staff hours and workload to manage those grants and manage those larger projects. But hopefully this map will be the reason for the 2017 start date is when the land and water plan was updated. So I'm hoping through the years here that we'll be able to add to this map and hopefully show some progress in water quality as a result of it. One other thing just to point out here would be our priority farm strategy. So this is identified in our land and water plan. And this is our attempt through that land and water planning process to try to prioritize some of our workload. Where do we, if we have a free moment, where do we go to first to engage someone? And this is kind of how that's set up on the left. On the right column, work plan implementation, looking at items in the land and water plan. Where do we see our best opportunities at the moment? And I would say, our farmer-led watershed groups, which I believe Steve Olson had presented to you in the past, to HEAT in the past. Those are some tremendous opportunities there. I think there's plenty of work that still needs to be done with those groups, and will continue. I think the Red Cedar demonstration farm here, just outside my window, I need to educate myself on that more. I think there's some tremendous opportunity there for showcasing agricultural practices that are preferred, and hopefully we can demonstrate that they are an improvement for water quality and profitability. And then again, ordinance administration. Watershed prioritization I'll touch on here next. And just kind of looking at the future, these things are where I see us in the next 5 years spending our time. There's a lot of tremendous amount of detail for each one of these in the background, but coordination of citizen and agency work group efforts. So, like I mentioned before, and on that other software program I showed you, just the number of, like, from the livestock operations study group to the groundwater ad hoc to your work group with HEAT, and all the other things that are at play here in Dunn County. How do we participate and be responsive and build shared understanding for within the community around those concerns that are brought up? And it appears that the Land and Water Conservation Division is involved in a lot of those, so we have some tremendous responsibility. The TMDL or 9KE, that's 9 key element planning. So that's the implementation of the Red Cedar watershed basin, making sure that we're putting effort into that watershed to to see surface water quality improvements, but to not forget about groundwater quality, not only in that TMDL, but also countywide. Looking at our producer-led groups in building their capacity, expanding their capacity, making sure there's accountability as part of those groups as well. I mentioned the demonstration farm network, grazing and marketing strategy. I think there's a need and a drive by several people in the county, which I'm sure there's more, but for looking at how our land is managed and how do we incorporate grazing, not only from a land use situation or benefit for water quality, but also for the marketing side of it. How do we, if we don't have the market there, how do we protect our water resources more efficiently? Water quality and quantity monitoring. I have a great interest in improving that, specifically private well monitoring. I think for us to help prioritize our workload, we need to know where the resource concerns are. And we have a number of different tools to do that, but having data is important. And right now we've tried to resurrect some of the old Red Cedar basin monitoring efforts that Ted Ludwig kind of spearheaded for many years, and hoping through our water resource specialist, Heather Wood, that we're going to try to fill in some gaps that are lacking through DNR. And there's several citizens that are participating in that water action volunteer program right now, and we're hoping to grow that. I think there's twofold there. I think there's benefits in obviously collecting the data, interpreting the data, but also connecting people with the water that's in their backyard, reminding them that they have a stake in this as well, whether they're a farmer or they're not, and having that connection with that water is important. We are continuing to do some quantity monitoring, looking at water depths and a number of wells around the county to try to continue to track that for quantity or water use. So that will continue. And then really starting now to try to take advantage of this opportunity with public health to get on the same page as far as what type of groundwater and well monitoring program do we have in the county? What type of funds are available, or what other services can we offer? And part of that is, and we're still working on it, but hope to roll it out very soon, is more of a public facing website, interactive tool regarding groundwater quality, and really hoping to help people build a shared understanding around our current situation and the trends that are taking place. With all of that said, utilizing that data, utilizing where we have the opportunities in the county, is to really prioritize our watersheds, and not just the Red Cedar watershed, but the Huck 12s or the smaller watersheds within our county. Some of those may be in the Red Cedar watershed, some of them may not be, but looking at our data, and if we had limited staff time and staff dollars and cost share funds, where do we get the biggest bang for our dollar and our time? And that's not to exclude other parts of the county, but it's hoping to put efforts into certain small local areas to see change. And if we can demonstrate change by the practices that are installed, then that hopefully can be systemic throughout the county, throughout the watershed, and not necessarily need our helping hand always. Likely we'll have to be there for compliance reasons at certain times, but we're hoping to that kind of spearhead this through a more efficient and effective use of our time. I mentioned the ordinance update. That's hopefully going to be adopted by county board. That will really change our game in a way as far as implementation of performance standards. And then I mentioned that priority farm and watershed strategies before. I certainly can go on in greater detail on any one of those. I still have a ton of learning to do just on the system here in Dunn County, just on the management of personnel and staff. Coming from a county where there was really only 2 of us that were really doing straight up conservation work. We were diluted in all kinds of other ways for other resource needs, but coming here to Dunn County now and the tremendous opportunity that we have with our staff. I'm looking forward to it, but there is going to be challenges to organizing that. And that's just an expectation. It's no fault of anyone's other than everyone getting to know each other and look forward to what we can accomplish. So hopefully I didn't talk too long, but I can try to answer questions you might have.
Chase, I have several questions, but I know I need to share, so share your time. So I'm going to start out with the big question. Well, I think they're all big questions, but one question relative to heat. How, I hear you're wanting to work with citizen and agency work groups, and boy, it doesn't take much knowledge of your agency to know that you've got way more than you have staff and time and money. I mean, it does. Your list is makes that pretty evident. I know the number of conservation people out in the community and the nonprofit groups, heat being one of them, who really want to help and support and collaborate. Having been involved with some of the citizen committees that they've had where we're saying we want to be involved and we want to help, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot. There's been a tremendous effort, as there should be, with the farmer-led groups. Absolutely a tremendous effort, and applause. But how do we, as conservation-minded people and groups, work with your agency and with PR&D? I haven't seen a whole lot of embrace. I think they, and this is maybe an impossible question for you, given that you're fairly new. I think they want to have citizen involvement. I think they welcome it. They're kind about it. But when it comes push to shove about how we work together, I get real puzzled and mixed messages. Particularly, you talk about the ad hoc committee, it was on there about having a citizen thing, and maybe that's not the way to go, but it's still a question about how do we work together and support what you're doing. And maybe the problem is you're so busy that taking on a group of us, that's just one more thing for you to do and you really don't have time for it. I don't know what the issues are and how to go about that.
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge, and that's something that we do need to figure out is, even internally right now, just trying to, how do we tackle the workload that's coming in, and trying to figure out, okay, we have, just this week, I actually tried to count it up, and I think I mentioned it to Steve when we talked the other day. At any given time, we're over 40 different landowners that we're working with on different stuff, and that doesn't stop. And I think sometimes there's an expectation that we just go out and we correct a problem and we move on to the next. And some of these take, we're on an enforcement case that's over 5 years in the making, and the amount of time it takes on that. So I think there's a challenge on our side to just prioritize our workload as it's ever evolving. And you're right, to take on something new isn't always attractive. But I'm not sure I know what was in the minds of those that were on a lot of these committees, and I need to talk to those people more. But to your point of the like a water quality committee, or like this group, heat, can we utilize groups like that, or create groups to review our water quality data on a regular basis and accept feedback on that? I think not only from building a shared understanding on the subject, but also disseminating accurate information. I think there's tremendous conversation that's taking place in all these different groups around the county, around the state, and I'd like to use the nutrient management planning coverage as an example. Right now in 2020, we were at 25% coverage of nutrient management plans in the county. And, if you look at the report that's probably coming out from DACAP right now, every county took a huge hit across the state. We're talking like 20% reduction in or more in the coverage of planning across the county. And that doesn't look good on paper, but the context isn't there, because what had happened is DACAP took out all the CAFO farms that were covered, that had nutrient management plan coverage. And then that leaves, okay, what do you have left in the county? So it's not a true representation of what coverage is for nutrient management planning. And even at the 25%, I would argue that we have more nutrient management planning taking place in the county. They're just not maybe meeting that exact 590 standard. They're not turning a plan in. There is nutrient management that's taking place. And I think trying to engage with this group and other citizen groups to help share the local understanding of the situation is more of maybe a disseminating of information as much as it is a feedback loop. And I don't know the best. We'll get there. I mean, that's all I can say, is that we'll find something that works. I'm still trying to figure out what some of my staff were originally supposed to be doing. Like there's just that general stuff. So I understand, Kathy, your point, and I hope to have a better answer at some point in the future.
Well, I think it's almost an impossible question for you being new. It's just, but part of it is, when I see, from the, the livestock studying group and the groundwater ad hoc group being part of that, and see these recommendations about citizen engagement, and I don't see a lot of it in certain aspects. The farmer stuff, I absolutely, and I think there's a wonderful, and I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing that, but how do we engage in? I look just even on this platform right here, the people here, on this that you're looking at, with the exception maybe of Moab, are really knowledgeable, active people who have a lot of connections. And how do we use this?
Right.
This energy that you see in front of you here? And we're one part of a number of groups, and how do we harness that to help you do what you want to do? Or maybe that's not your picture,
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, and I know this is a delicate subject, but is we have the intention of and take the Red Cedar Conference, for example. The intention of that is to bring people together of all walks of life, of all perspectives, and get them into a room to hear the same speaker, to hear the same information, and then hopefully have a conversation about it. And, I think that's, I'm not, like I said, I don't fully understand the background of every group in the county, but I feel like that's the intention of many groups, is to have a diverse input. And then, we still fall into our silos of like-minded perspectives. The farmer-led watershed groups, those are created because the farmers just want to be with farmers. They want to learn from farmers, but they're not always engaging the other citizens. And that same can probably go in all directions. So I'm not sure, unfortunately, I was not trained as a social scientist. And I think that was a downfall to a lot of the conservation education over the years, is the lack of being a used car salesman. We know the science, we know what needs to be done, but relaying that to people is something either you have it or you don't, or you need to learn it on the job. And it just takes time. And sometimes it's not time that we can wait either. So that's a non-answer, Kathy.
No, I get it. It's just interesting. I hear it on the county level, on the supervisor levels, what I'm talking about. But yet when it comes push to shove, I'm not too sure any of us know how to get it done.
Yeah.
Can I keep on questions? I'm waiting for other people to ask questions so I don't hog the time.
I had a question on Non-metallic mining ordinance, is that something you guys are gonna be working on? The reclamation portion of it, updating it?
That's not on our radar right now. My experience with reclamation is, we have an ordinance that's based off of administrative code NR 135.
Mhm.
And it can be quite restricted to what's in that code and what we have the authority to do. I mean, it's just reclamation. With that said, there is obviously some professional judgment and discretion in implementation of that. So I'm working with the staff that work on that. I'm getting to know a lot of the, not all of them. I've been on a handful of sites since I've been here, but there's probably opportunities there to look for improvement in our administration of it. But
Especially
unfortunately,
the bond amount?
correct. Yep.
'Cause- Okay, just wondering, because a year or two ago, when Fairmount, whatever it's called now, Covia, when their one mine went bankrupt in Maiden Rock, I had emailed Tom Quinn to ask him, about if the reclamation plan and the bonding amount was enough to reclaim, because it's in our town of Red Cedar.
Mhm.
And how does that even work? And he was having somebody look into it, and they said it was a sufficient amount of bond, but then he asked him to talk to Chippewa County, the land conservation officer there, because he was in the middle of a lawsuit on it, and I just never heard anything else about it.
Yeah, I think that bond was recently updated. I think the calculation on all the bonds to make sure they're adequate needs to be reviewed on a site-specific situation each time. My experience when I was in Pepin County, when I started in Pepin County, that reclamation ordinance for the state had been in place since about 2002. So it was fairly new, about, 5 to 6 years old. And there had been some bond adjustments at that time. I think the same was probably consistent here in Dunn County, is that, rather than and I really took some heat in Pepin County because I tried to assign bond adjustments to each individual mine site, which to me still is logical. And there's a lot of pushback from the industry and board members and stuff, where it ended up settling on, well, what was the inflation rate for that time period? And let's do a percentage of that and just update everyone's across the board. Well, my argument is if you had a substandard number to start with and you add 15% to it, it's still substandard. So I think, with time, we're going to be hopefully visiting all these sites and looking at them a little bit closer and making the necessary adjustments when that opportunity is there. So,
Okay, great. Thank
Just to add on to, and then I don't want to steal Barb's time, but to add on to that, one of the things that, became real clear in Chippewa County where I was more involved, the performance standards were really shabby in Chippewa County. And as I recall looking at Covius, and this has been some years ago, about the performance standard of what they'd have to do with reclamation, it was thin. It was really thin.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not only bonding for what there is, but to make sure that there are performance
doing.
standards that are,
right.
yeah.
Okay, Barb.
Anyway.
My question is too big for the 2 minutes we have left. So.
I'm willing to stay. It's okay.
Can you give us an elevator speech on TMDL as it applies to the Red Cedar watershed? Just a real quick, those words, what they stand for and what it means.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Total maximum daily load, that's TMDL. And basically what that is it's based on a whole host of different information, but it's the maximum load that a water body can sustain and not have detrimental effects. So for, I think it's for Monoman, within the first 10 years, we need to reduce the phosphorus input by like 186,000 pounds or something like that. So each TMDL for each watershed has a limit that we need to bring our phosphorus reduction down to in order for that water body to see a positive turnaround or positive effects. So.
Thanks.
Are you willing to stay a little longer or do you
Sure.
have it? Okay.
I don't think I got something at 1:30, so.
Um, what portion, what portion of the DAC cap funding that you get, you're saying that we can only do a portion of what we request. What portion, or do you have a percentage of the requests that you've been able to accomplish?
Sure. So
And how much of that is a result of a lack of funding or a lack of available staff to do what the workups that you need to do to get their funding?
yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on there. For example, we apply for what we think we can reasonably accomplish with our staff time. And some years we might, based on the projects that we foresee, we could apply for $100,000 for projects. More recently, it's been around the $80,000 mark. So I think last year we applied for 80,000. We ended up getting 60 in return. So the other thing is and hopefully we're on the right track now too going forward is, sometimes we get in a situation where the weather, right now contractor availability is a tremendous struggle, trying to get people the contractor that they need when they need to do the project. And then we end up having to get to the end of the year and it's too late to do the project. We have to extend the funds. And we don't want to extend funds because if we extend them, then we only have the next construction season. And if it doesn't get done, then we lose the money, it goes back to the state. So there's some pressure on our part to make sure we have slam dunk projects ready to go when we get those funds. And we got to build that relationship with that landowner to say, you know what, we may need to build this waterway in the middle of summer. And therefore, we really can't care whether there's a corn crop in this certain area. There's several farmers that say, yep, go mow the corn down. We want this project done. And that's getting better, but that isn't always the case. So from a staff capacity standpoint, I think it's going to depend on what type of project it is. For example, we've applied for some trim funds for a particular farm to address what is about to fail a manure storage structure, about to completely blow out and dump into a stream that's 100 feet away. Those funds are $225,000. So we'll take advantage of that. It's maybe 2 or 3, maybe one person FTE to try to manage that if we get those funds. But we could be writing those grants on a whole handful of projects. But then the problem is how do we administrate them on our side? Our accounting system, our budget process, we have to do budget modifications, and there's just all kinds of other hurdles. Doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue it because of the administrative overhead, but it's just the workload and the time available to do that and make sure that we get that money and get everything set up in a manner that we can have the construction of a functional project at the right time. But in general, our state funds are always less than what we probably apply for.
Has anything happened relative to securing the soil specialist funding?
Yeah, so a little background there. We have basically a position that's 100% grant funded for our soil health specialist. Those grants are expiring. We applied for another grant and that we were not awarded that grant. So now in the eyes of some would say that once the grant funding is out, the position goes away. And that's the battle we're fighting right now. So right now I have put it in the budget to maintain that position. You notice on my org chart at the beginning of list, there's a vacant position. Unfortunately, we're probably going to I'll have to sacrifice that vacant position in order to try to keep a position. In the worst case scenario, we're going to lose them both. And it really comes down to the support of our oversight committee, PR&D, when it comes to the budget time. And obviously citizen support, you're all welcome to speak up in favor of it, but the committee's decision to recommend that to the full county board and then the full county board's decision as to where the budget ends up. And I'm hoping I can come back to staff and tell them, hey, we got you in the budget. So it's kind of a wait and see moment right now, but I'm prepared to to put my best foot forward, justifying the position, the benefits of that position, and then it's kind of beyond my control after that.
You said you're prioritizing swims, swims is a wonderful thing. How did you get to that priority as opposed to testing individual private wells?
Can you refer to swims? You're talking about surface water stuff, or?
Yeah, you were talking about trying to prioritize the swims program and get more monitoring going of the.
I think it's
surface water.
equally, in my eyes, the prioritization is equal. I think we have some data gaps in some of our surface water where we need to try to understand, where we're at on a stream dynamic aspect or quality aspect to help raise or lower that particular watershed in our priority, but then overlapping that with private well monitoring with all of our other data. At the same time, I think we need to really improve or actually develop a routine annual private well monitoring program, whether that's a voluntary program or a program that we can get funds in every now and then to help boost it, but provide an opportunity for citizens that want their well sampled to bring a sample in, and we'll help facilitate it and help interpret the data. And we get to keep the data, make it part of our system that's public facing. So that, like I said, that's something that trying to take advantage of this window I think we have with public health and KT to try to iron that out, and hopefully we can get something established that we can turn to. And if funding comes available at times, we can come in and we can boost that program. One idea would be we want to see a private well monitored in every government section of the county. And there's a lot of sections in the county. We did that. I set that up in Pepin County. We had 240 sections, small county, and we could get through all of those every 5 years. So every 5 years, that particular well in that township is getting monitored. We'll maybe try to rotate it so it's a different season, but it's not the best trend analysis, but it is a trend analysis in the long term. So if we could do that for the next 20 years, and we can look at these trends that we may have data, gaps in our area that don't have any well monitoring at all, how do we fill those? And where we do have well monitoring, how do we track whether we're making a difference? If it's getting worse, are we making improvements? And what other characteristics are affecting that? So.
Well, it's a heck of a lot better than what we've got now. And see, I see that as one of the things where he could really have a big voice. If there was a program set up and whatever, I think he could come out and have a big impact on the towns and getting the sections. It really was not hard to mobilize in our township. And, I just think that would, that's something where that could be a really a nice collaboration.
Yeah, I agree, Kathy. That would be wonderful.
Could you talk? I think it'd be a big thing, and I'm just, I am so impressed with what happened even on our little itty bitty town level in terms of information getting out and the response. Could it be better? 100 many percentage better, obviously, but I'm just impressed about what a lame little attempt can accomplish. But anyway, where are we at with this, the ag performance on 151 in the county? And, are you optimistic? I'm hearing different responses about some of the performance standards that are in there, and where are we at with that, do you think, in terms of its passage?
Yeah, regarding the nitrate targeted performance standard. Yeah. I've talked to, so I was on the technical advisory committee for the development of those performance standards, and obviously with many things there's compromise that was as a result. That's what resulted was these performance standards going forward. But right now it doesn't look good. The larger ag lobby, ag coalitions are really coming back with some stark comments on the economic analysis. So I don't even know if it's going to make it past that. I really haven't received much update from anybody officially, but just kind of the ear to the ground. There's a lot of uphill battle to be had yet. Which is unfortunate because this is maybe one of the best opportunities we have to try to address some of those situations, some of those issues. And, you know, if it dies on the vine now, to get that back to where it was, I'm not sure it's going to happen anytime soon.
That's discouraging. That's kind of what I was hearing, that there was a real big pushback about that. Yeah. I could keep on going, but I feel piggy. Yeah. You talked about the health and conservation group. Is that, I ask this one question, then I will shut up. That health and conservation group that you're on the state level, is that sort of a big level of what you're doing with KT on the county level? You know, or are there different priorities? You know, I know so little about that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've actually looked at our goals for that group, but it's very similar to maybe what we need to iron out and work with here locally, but more on a statewide basis. One of the biggest things was just our local land conservation departments talking with their public health officers. I think for years that just, they were separate departments and they weren't really, no one recognized the connection, or maybe the public health officers in those counties, their expertise was not in environmental health. It was in, viruses or, other nurse things that just didn't really connect the dots. And I think I'd like to think that work group helped elevate that conversation a little bit more and more. There's a lot of surveys that we sent out and information to counties to try to connect encourage land conservation departments to connect with their public health departments. And I think there's been some tremendous progress there. And then, obviously once a pandemic hits, things all go to hell. And now we got to try to pick up the pieces and get back to that. But the encouraging thing is like KT, she has tremendous interest in environmental health. That's her expertise. And that's,
yeah,
I'm not used to that. I'm excited for that. My other co-chair on that work group is Dale from Marathon County. He's the public health officer there. And he had a tremendous, or he was very grateful in that work group just for the education part of what conservation is and what happens on these farms. Like there's a perspective that he just didn't quite understand, even though he grew up on a farm. So I think there's more potential there. It's just we need to get rally the troops again. So
well, I'm excited about what has happened and what can happen in Dunn County. I just think that you and I don't mean this as smoozing. I genuinely mean this, but I think put you and KT together. This could really be an exciting. There's some exciting things happen out of it.
I think the one thing that I struggle with still, and it's just a reality of the situation, is just, stuff just doesn't happen fast enough. We have all these good ideas, and like this public facing, very similar to the way Kevin Masaryk has it set up with the Wisconsin Well Water Viewer. We have something like that already in place here for Dunn County. We just haven't turned it to the public yet to put it on the website. We need to work out a few things, and I just wish that would have happened months ago, and it's just not. So we'll get there. I gotta be patient.
I believe it. And, and once again, I can get really excited about the people who are involved with that. I'm assuming Rachel is involved with that.
Yes. Yep.
And, boy, talk about somebody whose heart's in it and talented. It's that's the thing about what's happening with Dunn County. There are exciting, talented, savvy people working there. And how do you get that information out to the population and know what all's happening? Right. That's the connection that, I'd like to see us make and Heat make.
And I would say, I think there was a question on the last, before we jump to this Zoom from Sandra, about a student involvement and activities.
Oh,
for
that's
that.
right.
You know, and we had, it's my understanding, we always have an intern every year, and unfortunately that just didn't pan out this year. That's through partnership with NRCS and obviously the Alliance. I look forward to exploring that again next year. I think there's a lot of different things, especially if students are interested in GIS and just mapping information. Like Rachel can't do it all, our staff can't do it all. So, typical intern work, but data entry and interpretation, I think we have a lot of stuff that we can figure out. It's going to take obviously our workload to figure that out for them, to get them on the right track and make sure they know what we want. But there's opportunities there for sure.
And one of the things that Sandy was talking about, we were talking about it before you got on, as she mentioned. We've met with Mandy Little and Keith Gillen about projects where, that suggesting projects to them that could be capstone projects. And if you have a capstone project regarding GIS, they're open for it. They just need, what they're saying is they need, and I think that's where Sandy was going, is are there projects that you have in mind that they could do during the academic year, specific projects, because we're going to try to get some to them by this fall so that students have a chance to choose and take a peek at, but maybe you were already doing that.
Well, I think one of the challenges for us is this, we need to set our data up, or figure out what we want before we give it to a student for a capstone. That's going to be the biggest question. They're going to look at us and be like, well, what do you want? And we're going to say, well, I don't know, figure it, so we gotta, there's definitely, we have these good ideas. We just need to make sure we take the time to get it organized so that we can take advantage of an opportunity like that.
I already said I was in my last question, so I'm shutting up.
Oh, can't quite hear you, Kathy.
I said it was my last question. I am shutting up. Everybody else is on mute. I'm going to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Knowing how busy you are and that you spent this big block of time. Wow. Thank you so much. That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I would just say too, I know I missed the previous heat meeting, but it is my intention. I have it on the calendar to participate on as regular basis as I can. And I hope that's okay. So, all right.
We learn a lot.
I don't want to crash the party if I'm not welcome at certain topics or something.
And send a representative if you can't. We have had the person in Heather's position was attending for a while, and so your office is always welcome.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jessica used to be real involved. As a matter of fact, she was involved with our beginnings.
Sure.
And helping our beginnings.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Cool.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.